Što se događa u posljednje vrijeme s američkim bazama u Siriji?
Mediji možda i nisu najčešće prenijeli ovu vijest, ali američke baze u Siriji u posljednjih danima su napadnute više puta od strane iračkih dronova, koji navodno vode proksi rat u Siriji. No što se zapravo događa? Probati ćemo vidjeti u ovom videu da li je ovo sve napad pod lažnom zastavom ili je nešto drugo posrijedu. Da li su na pomolu novi ratovi ili je posrijedi samo staro uzbukavanje strasti? Procijenite sami.
Ono što je zanimljivo da su svi ovi napadi izvršeni pokraj velikih nalazišta nafte i da su u to vrijeme američki radari misteriozno bili ugašeni te nisu mogli detektirati strane letjelice koje se približavaju. To je malo čudno, zar ne?
No pogledajte do kraja ovaj video i misteriozni intervju jednog od američkih službenika. I sami donesite procjenu o čemu se ovdje zapravo radi. Jer za koju god stranu se odlučivali, na kraju je ipak kralj samo jedan, a on se zove novac.
A U.S. contractor was killed yesterday and 5 U.S. service members and one additional U.S. contractor were wounded.
Why wasn't there a contingency to shoot down the drone if it was coming into the base?
Again, look, we take a variety of measures to safeguard our people, but again, it's an inherently dangerous place, and again, we'll look into the details of the actual attack.
The U.S. response was swift. President Biden directed Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin to launch precision airstrikes with F-15 fighter jets against facilities used by Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps in eastern Syria. In response, Iran proxy forces U.S. casualties and no damage to the base. There are about 900 U.S. troops in Syria fighting ISIS. This was not the first time Iran has targeted U.S. bases.
Since 1 January 2021, the number is about 78 times that we have been attacked. So what Iran does to hide its hand is they use Iranian proxies. That's either UAVs or rockets to be able to attack our forces in either Iraq or Syria.
Tonight, Iranian-backed forces fired more missiles at U.S. military personnel based in eastern Syria near the oil fields near Deir al-Zor. Additional U.S. forces have received injuries. Some may be serious. President Biden, while meeting Canada's Prime Minister, said the U.S. does not seek conflict with Iran, but is prepared to respond forcefully to protect U.S. personnel. At the Pentagon.
A very new development here. She says, according to a U.S. official, new attacks on 2 U.S. bases in eastern Syria. One involved Iranian proxy forces firing rockets. A second involved multiple Iranian drones. And so right now, we want to just replay for you some of the sound. President Biden commented on this very story here as he was in Ottawa, Canada, at that joint press conference with the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. Let's listen to what he has to say.
Speaking of the progress of this trip, I was informed by my national security team on the way over here that about an attack in Syria yesterday. An Iranian-backed militant groups used an unmanned aerial vehicle to strike one of our facilities, causing several American casualties. One of our citizens tragically died in that attack. And on the flight up yesterday, I spoke to our national security team and ordered an immediate response. Last night, U.S. military forces carried out a series of airstrikes in Syria, targeting those responsible for attacking our personnel. My heart and deepest condolences go out to the family of the American we lost and wish a speedy recovery for those who were wounded. But I'm also grateful for the professionalism of our service members who so ably carried out this response. And to make no mistake, the United States does not emphasize seek conflict with Iran, but be prepared for us to act forcefully, protect our people. That's exactly what happened last night. We're going to continue to keep up our efforts to counter terrorist threats in the region in partnerships with Canada and other members of the coalition to defeat ISIS. Now, let me get to today's business. It's wonderful to be back in Canada. I'm honored I had a chance to address Parliament this afternoon. They were very patient, and I appreciate it. And, you know, a little over 75 years ago.
Okay, so President Biden, right off the top of that joint press conference today, commenting on this drone strike that hit a U.S. Army facility in Syria yesterday, injuring 5 U.S. service members and killing 1 American contractor. Right now, I want to put up a tweet from Fox News foreign affairs correspondent Trey Yingst with this. Reports that al-Bukamal, Syria, is getting hit with U.S. strikes right now and linked groups for attacks against American soldiers and contractors. All right, let's talk about all of this even further with national security expert Hal Kempfer, who's joining us now. He's been on top of this story all day. And Hal, thanks for being with us. Like I said, I know you've been following this today. And I was going to ask you what our U.S. response is going to be to this, but I showed Trey Yingst's tweet there. I want to put it back up here. This is a different one. More rocket attacks tonight from Iranian proxies in Syria. These groups receive weapons and support directly from the Iranian regime. Ongoing potential for escalation and miscalculation. This is a tit for tat right now, is it not, Hal?
Andrew, very much. And that's been something that's been talked about all day, is that, you know, what President Biden said is a proportionate response, and that's always been our policy, is a proportionate response. But there's been a lot of discussion about these one-for-one responses and whether they're actually achieving anything because, you know, for example, when we did the airstrike, immediately they turned around and used rocket fire against our bases. Again, now we have this exchange that's gone across all day. So at U.S. Central Command, they have to be trying to figure out what would be a proportionate response that would achieve the desired end state. And it may be a much more aggressive response than what we saw, because this simple a strike here, strike there, going back and forth isn't stopping these strikes. So they may be looking at something much more concerted. Potentially, they could be looking at Iran, but based on the language I've heard from the White House so far, it doesn't sound like they want to escalate this thing to involving Iran itself, Iran territorial stuff, even though these groups are directly supported. And in many cases, the IRGC really does kind of have operational control of what they do. But with that said, they don't want to escalate too much. But you may see a very large-scale strike in Syria, and potentially they could be looking beyond that. But right now, probably within Syria.
Okay, so how, I guess, definite or sure are U.S. officials that it is of Iranian origin? We've been hearing those 2 words.
I can't tell you I'm there,
sure,
and certainly I'm not seeing it, but I will tell you this. I think they're probably about 100% sure of the connection that's going on with it. I don't think there's any doubt in their minds as to what this is. And usually when it gets up to the White House level and certainly the Pentagon level, when they're briefing Iranian-backed groups or IRGC-backed groups, they're 100% certain. And it's not something where they went and had to go research it. It's usually something that they already knew. In fact, they probably already knew the moment the missiles or the drone came in and then the missiles came in, exactly where they came from. Now, one of the things that they're probably looking at is certainly at the first strike at the Husaka Air Base, near the oil field. That strike, the reports are that the air defense radar system was actually down for maintenance. And so it's very likely that the Iranian-backed group did know that the radar was down for maintenance. Could have been through observation, could have been through other means. But they knew that. They took advantage of that gap in our air defense surveillance capability, and they used it. And I'm sure that on the count that they're looking very closely to figure out how would they have known. And it could be simple observation. They're sitting up on a hill. They look and they see it's being repaired. It could be some other way that they know, but they're probably looking at that. And then they're trying to figure out, should we adjust the way that we do this to avoid these sorts of gaps in the future? And I'm sure that's an active discussion.
So, Hal, what's Iran's play here? What do they hope to possibly extract? Do they want something? Why are they doing this? I know there's a lot of nefarious activity in this part of the Middle East with their proxies and militias. But do U.S. officials think that Iran is, doing something here that could lead to more wider conflict?
Well, in general, when they use their proxies to strike U.S. forces or U.S. positions anywhere in the Middle East, that's a way for Iran to send a message to us to strike at us, to up the cost. I mean, in a larger sense, what they want to do is they like to set the conditions where the U.S. would consider pulling its forces out of Syria altogether. That would be a larger scale sort of thing. Specifically, there may have been something that we were doing operationally on the ground, either us or the Syrian Democratic Front or somebody else that we were involved with over there, that they may have been choosing this as an opportunity to make a statement about that or to make a specific strike. There's really no way of knowing that, but in general, they like us to pull our forces back. Ironically, the Iranian presence there is backing the Syrian government, and they're attacking ISIS. Our purpose for being there is to attack ISIS. So in a larger sense, we're both aligned against the same enemy, which is ISIS.
Okay.
However, that doesn't seem to be overcoming the natural antipathy that Iran has for the U.S. and of course, their opportunistic strikes against our forces wherever they find them.
Yeah. You know, I think Americans might forget we do have a troop presence in Syria still, also many U.S. contractors there. How many U.S. troops and contractors would you say are there right now?
Well, there's about 900 U.S. troops, and then you can add on to that contractor, so it's well over 1,000. I don't have an exact number of that. I would say it's probably between 1,000 and 2,000 would be my guess. It might be slightly over. The contractor thing is always tougher to pin down because a lot of times they don't like to put out exact numbers on the number of contractors in there. But they came back today and they said 900 troops, and then you add on whatever the contractor presence is above that. And it also depends at any particular time as to what's being done. Are they building out certain facilities? Are they doing other things? At those times, you will certainly see a surge of contractors who go in there for a short period of time, and then they leave. And as someone who, over the years, I've been a government contractor,